adjust the energy. You know what I mean? As best you can. Adjust what you wake up thinking and what you say. And then lastly, what you do. There's no one answer to how you change the hood or change the reality of what goes on. But what you gotta think about is when you don't have resources, you in survival mode. You know, so being in survival mode automatically rules out a lot of things because you don't care about morality, because you don't experience morality. You experience, you know, the need to survive. You don't experience, you know, fairness. You don't experience planning for the future. You just experience my ribs touching. You know what I mean? And it's better me than you. And, you know, it's a survival instinct that kick in. So I think once you get out of the survival mode, your morals come back closer to your daily decision making. You start thinking about what's right and what do I believe in. But until you get out of survival mode, you ain't got time to be worrying about right and wrong. You worrying about bottom line. You know what I mean? By any means necessary. So I think that economics is the answer. Empowering people economically is how you really, really impact. But I don't know if it's about dropping a bag of money in the hood. I think it's about impacting culture in a way that, you know, the mentality changes. And then also, you know, the institutions that exist. It's just a prison institution, really. It's like a pipeline to jail. It ain't no constructive institutions for real that meets you ground level. It's just like if you fuck up, we got somewhere to put you. So it's like a fear-based preventative approach than like some love. And like we know y'all going through a struggle, and we know y'all could use an art center or you know what I mean, a studio compound or entrepreneurial space. It's like whatever going on, if you can't figure it out, we gonna lock you up, bro. So whatever it is, yeah, it's on y'all. I think like you get people out of survival mode, they start thinking different. I did, you know, when I figured out, you know, how to get myself out of the situation, my approach to life and people was different. I wasn't so angry. I didn't have my guard up. I wasn't so aggressive. I wasn't so, you know, expecting if you ain't helping me, fuck you. That wasn't the mentality no more. And I can't blame nobody, you know what I mean, that's thinking about how they gonna pay their rent or like going through not having food at the house, being young and having to go outside to hustle to feed themselves for school clothes. That's gonna change people. That's gonna make you feel away. And you can't fault them. You just gotta kind of empathize with the scenario and understand you put a person in survival mode, they're gonna survive by any means. I couldn't make a blanket statement to just the young people doing dirt. I don't think that's honest. You know what I mean? It's context for everything. Nothing happens in a vacuum, you know? But I would say that, you know what I mean, you're gonna lay in the bed you make. You're not gonna get away with nothing in terms of the energy. You know what I mean? You might beat the camera or the police. They might not catch you for what you're doing, but the energy is always gonna return to you. So when you just living in this cycle of being negative all day and just putting out negativity and that's the only energy you putting out, it's gonna return to you in different form than you put it out in. So I would just say, you know, master your energy. Do your best to master your energy and what you put out, you know, and unless that's what you want, you know, because you entitled to whatever you want to create, whatever experience you want to create for yourself. But if you're tired of that shit, adjust the energy. You know what I mean? As best you can. Adjust what you wake up thinking and what you say. And then lastly, what you do. And that's not an easy thing to do because it's such a pressure in these areas to just go by the way things are. But, you know, it's a lot of examples that you could look up to as young kids in the streets. You could look up to Kendrick Lamar. Not the words, forget what he's saying, just where he came from. I seen him, you could YouTube him freestyling in the Nicholson Garden Projects. You could look up to a Nip Hussle. You know, you could look up to a YG, you know what I mean, to a Top Dog, you know what I mean, to any one of these guys that came from this hopelessness and you know, wiggled their way through it. You know what I mean? And you could reverse engineer what they did, You know, look at the steps. What happened? You know, so I would say that. You're in a great position if you got successful mentors that you can get direct advice from. And I've been privileged to be able to get advice from a lot of successful people like Puff or like a Rick Ross, you know what I mean, or a T.I., you know what I'm saying, or just anybody that has come before me in the game, Snoop, and offered me, you know what I mean, some inside advice. But then it's a lot of people that I don't know personally that I draw from they blueprint as well, and just, you know, watch their interviews and read up on their story. I recently met Jermaine Dupri, like really had a convo with him, and that's somebody I used to always study on, because I remember realizing he's a producer, he's a writer, he writes raps and songs, he owns his own label, he's an executive, he's an artist himself that's successful and Grammy winning and, you know, the whole nine. So I was just like, dang, you know, he got a great understanding. And so I just done a lot of studying and research on him. But yeah, man, just, I think it's vital to pattern yourself after success. Don't copy, but, you know, identify the moves that really impacted these people's trajectory. And, you know, you can import some of those things. Ross told me something real. He was like, you know, you measure your success by how many people you bless. And I'd never heard that before. And then he also said another convo was like, you know, I don't want $1 more than what's mine, or $1 less. And that's how I deal with all my artists. That's what he was saying. I don't want a penny more than what's mine. You pay me, you know, $1.1 million, and my cut is $1 million, I'm gonna leave $1 on the table. But I ain't taking 999,000 either. I need that extra $1,000. I need all mine, and I don't want a penny more, a penny less. And I took that and deposited that into my perspective, you know what I mean, about everything. I don't want nothing I ain't entitled to, but I want everything that's mine, though, all of it. The inner city co-work space and incubator is called Vector 90. It got a detail right up online, just vector90.com. But in a nutshell, it's a space for entrepreneurs from the inner city to, you know, have an office and be able to, you know, have an upscale presentation for their meetings, and, you know, when they interview employees, or, you know, just want to bring investors in to possibly, you know, invest in what they're doing, or even just to create a synergy between like-minded people locally, to not have to drive to Beverly Hills or go 30 minutes from where you live, to be able to have a, you know, a curated space, high-speed internet, trademark lawyers that, you know, come through on rotation, and also have access to capital. Because Dave Gross was my partner, myself, you know, every year we're gonna pick one of the entrepreneurs and we're gonna do they round A seeding and investment into their companies. So I think it's just a unique idea that we already got 8 entrepreneurs renting the spaces out upstairs. The bottom level is going to double as a STEM center that we developing as we speak. You know, it's just the big picture goal is to help bridge the gap between, you know, the inner cities and, number one, Silicon Valley, number two, just the entrepreneurial space, by offering resources locally so that you don't have to, number one, compete against all of the other similar, I guess, people in different areas. You know what I mean? You got something that's tailor-made to your environment, that's you right around the corner from, you getting priority because you from this community. And number two, elevate the experience of the area, to where when you over here, you know, you got the Marathon store, which you might feel like you on Fairfax or you on Rodeo when you walk in there. And now when you go to Vector 90, which is on 62nd and Gramercy, about 10 minutes from the store, you know, you go in there and it's, you know what I mean, marble tables and glass installations. It's almost like an art gallery, you know, and it's just something to inspire hometown pride, and also, you know, meet the entrepreneurs with great ideas closer to where they naturally exist, you know. Yeah, no, we definitely got multiple businesses. I always thought of hip hop as a foot in the door to business on your own terms. So the goal was always to create, you know, an ecosystem around the music. So, you know, we got the Marathon clothing, we got the Marathon retail space, which is called the Marathon store, the Marathon OG, which is a grow house and medical marijuana brand. We got a restaurant partnership with Fat Burger. We got our own restaurant called Baba Leo's. We in the process of opening. We got a co-work, inner city co-work entrepreneurial incubator called Vector 90. We got a SC Ventures, which is a real estate development partnership between All Money In and Dave Gross. And we invested in a skating ring. That was our first project, was, being involved in the renovation and grand opening the World on Wheels skating ring in LA. And everybody from like Beyonce, Jay-Z, Floyd, Drake, then came through and threw parties there since we reopened it. Yeah, what else, man? Am I leaving anything out? Oh, the Marathon Agency. It's a creative marketing and branding agency with Karen Civil, Stephen Carles, George Paniche, and myself. When I say myself, I mean the All Money In team. So yeah, the goal is just to be able to create enterprise around the music and utilize the platforms and the attention that being in a position as an artist that people are interested in put you in to brand other businesses and create value around other things. So we done pretty well. If I was to narrow down the 3 most important keys to my success, I would definitely say consistency, because it don't happen overnight, and there's gonna be moments when it's really, really frustrating, and there's gonna be moments when it's really, really inspiring and empowering. And if you get too high off the highs and too low off the lows, you're gonna take yourself on a ride that's very, very uncomfortable. I think it's just about being committed to the work and appreciating it, when it's good, and not stressing too bad when it's bad, just appreciating the work and staying focused on showing up every day. The second key to my success, I would say, is, striving to master your craft and just offer a next level product, whether it's clothing, music, concerts, performances. Just understanding how important it is to really have a high quality product and consistently get better. And the third key to my success, is loyalty to the team. You know what I mean? Sometimes the game tests your loyalty by presenting an opportunity that looks like it's more beneficial to just, go against the team or go left onto some rogue shit. But when you stay loyal to the team, you're not tempted. When you've already committed to being loyal to the team, those things don't tempt you. And, I think that it reveals character over a while, and people see that, like, this would have been a good opportunity, but it's loyalty that prevented him from taking this. And that ended up working for you in the long run. Another memorable studio moment was when me and YG recorded Fuck Donald Trump. We was at Encore, which is in Burbank, in California. Mustard had a room booked, and the goal, we had came in to work on a collaborative project together. He was in the middle of recording his second album. I was in the middle of recording Victory Lap. I remember Young Thug was there. Duke was there. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Lil Durk came through. You know what I mean? YG, Mustard, all YG camp, Slim, my camp, BH, Kabi. It was a lot of us in there. We had done a couple concepts the days prior, but then YG like, man, what you think about a Fuck Donald Trump record? I'm like, yeah, I'm with that. He hadn't won the presidency yet. He was just campaigning. I don't even know if he got the Republican endorsement yet. He was just talking about running. He played a beat. 5 seconds later, he started like singing the hook, which is the hook that y'all hear. And then I'm like, that sounds tight, go lay it. He went there and laid it and came out. And the whole studio stopped and just looked at each other like, is this a record? It just felt like this shit is classic. It was just an effortless concept to execution, from talking about it, picking the beat, him saying what you think about this for the hook, going in, laying it, listening back on the loudspeakers, and everybody in the studio was like, this is something. And then I laid a verse, he laid a verse, and then I was the record. It came together quicker and more effortless than anything I've ever been a part of. You know what I mean? Just like 1, 2, 3, that shit was done, and it was banging, and we felt how powerful it was. And, we let it go the next day, and that shit ended up catching fire. My fucking moment was how I handled being evicted from this studio that we never missed rent at. It was just some political paperwork shit that went bad, and we took a big L. In the process of recording Victory Lap, right when I came off the Crenshaw tour, I spent a lot of money building the studio, renovated the space, built it from scratch. Spent a lot of time, energy, almost a year building it. And then we found out we had a sublease, and the owner of the building just evicted us in 2 days. I talked to the owners, and I'm like, I'll pay the rent for a year, direct. I didn't know who I was paying the rent to. Wasn't the owner. I was under the impression this was the owner. And they were just like, nah, we cool. We ain't really fucking with you. And they ain't really give me no reason. And I had all type of people like, I'm gonna burn the building down, hustle. You know what I mean? Fuck this building. The police came and literally evicted us. And we had, put the walls up, put the floors down, spent everything. Done everything in that building. And I just told everybody, chill. We ain't doing nothing. They got that. And we gonna take it as, we gonna just take that one for the team. And I knew that I had matured at that point because I ain't even want no retaliation because they robbed me, in essence. You know what I'm saying? They just took something from me. And they ended up keeping a lot of the walls and the structure up for their next tenant. You know what I mean? But it's cool. I ain't even take it as nothing but a higher energy moving me out of that space. I had all the resources to get it done without even saying do it. I just had to say cool. I ain't even had to say go do it. I just had to say yeah. But I said, nah, don't do nothing. We don't want to do nothing to these people, to this building. I don't even want to create that type of energy to come back around. It's good. We're going to take that on the chin. And, I felt good about that. Later on, I felt like, damn, I must be maturing. I must be coming into a different understanding because I don't let people take shit from me, historically. I don't let people do wrong to me. You know what I'm saying? I feel like I don't understand the turn the other cheek mentality. I understand people respect your stance. And if you say don't cross my line, they cross your line, you're going to spank them. And that has always kept people from crossing my line. But in this particular scenario, I have been exposed to new info and new experience to where I was just like, I don't even want to let this situation force me into putting out a negative energy that I'm going to have to be responsible for in the future. Even if we don't get caught, we get away for it. I just don't want that energy on my hands. I'm going to let the universe balance it out. I think the work ethic and the drive comes from remembering when we wasn't in the game, remembering when we didn't have people listening and fans interested in the music, and then understanding that right now we do, and just trying to live up to that as much as possible. A very memorable session was when, me and Puff did the Young Nigga record that's on Victory Lap. All my producers, we had been in the studio for months, just, fine-tuning the album. We took it to Puff, and we wanted him to get on this record called Rap Niggas that's on Victory Lap. And we played that one for him. He like, all right, cool. And then we played this other record, Young Niggas, and he jumped up and was excited about that one. And we was all tired. We had been working all week, and it was late at night. We'd been smoking weed all day. But his energy, he just jumped up and was with it. So, I ain't want to have the sluggish energy, so every time he come out the booth, we'd start clapping. I'm just turning the studio energy up. Like, this nigga going in the booth for my album, it's 2 a.m. We was doing push-ups and just, trying to keep the energy like on 10, because, Puff a high energy person. So I just made sure all my team was turned. Every time he came out the booth, when the takes was dope, we was making noise and just, we end up building a friendship that night. You know what I'm saying? Just off how he wasn't the, celebrity. He was a artist that night. You know what I'm saying? And we all was in artist mode. None of us was acting too cool to be into the artist mode of the session. There's a lot of people there, but I ain't gonna name drop. Puff was in there working. Yeah, so I got a record on this new album called Real Big. And, we had done it at 1500 Studio in Inglewood. And then we brought it to my new studio in Burbank to just add layers to it. And I was gone. I stepped out for a minute. My producer was in there working on it. When I came back, it was like Bink was in there, Battle Cat was in there, Marsha from Floetry was all there. It was just like a room full of greatness that I just walked into, and everybody was like on the keyboard. I think Marsha was in the booth, Bink was on the console, and they had just added all these textures to the record. Battle Cat was playing the Roger and Zapp machine, I forgot the name of it. And, Marsha was in the booth singing, and it just was like the record was coming alive, And that's one of my favorite records off Victory Lap. That happened under 1500 Banks production opinion. That was like, we need to call these people in and just add layers to it. So just walking in and seeing everybody working on my record was dope. You know, that was something that, you know, I was really inspired by.